Hello, I'm Allie McAvoy, and this is my Quipu project. First, I'm going to start with this green bead. This green bead represents the cortex, which is the exterior parts of the brain, and I made it very large because it is a very large storing part in the brain. And like your learning retention, it stores all of that and is responsible for a lot of things, hence its big size. Then the next is this red bead. This bead represents the limbic system, which represents the emotional life memories, and I made it red because red is the emotional part in the brain, and red is like love, and I made it red emotion. Then the next is a gold bead, which represents novelty. Novelty in the brain is changes in environment, and it's also novelty in attention. And I made this one gold because gold stands out, and I thought that information really stood out for me because it's like the brain likes changes, but it takes a while to get used to it. So my next section is the processing model is how our brain processes information, and I started with a flower because the flower represents environment and environment in the senses, which is sight, smell, touch, taste, and hear. And so the senses, it goes from that into the immediate memory, and from in the immediate memory is represented like a like a clipboard in the book, and so I made it like this because it's very detailed, and a clipboard carries detailed information. So I put the information processing model in immediate memory in this one, which is where 30 seconds of time your brain decides if it wants to go to working memory or dish out. And then the working memory, I made it like a wheel because it reminds me of a gear, where the working memory retakes information, breaks it apart, and tries to figure out if it wants to go into your long-term storage or go out from your working memory. And then it will go from your working memory to your long-term memory. This is your storage, and so you have filing cabinets, and I made it big because you can store a lot of information in your brain, and from this it goes to your self-concept, which is also your cognitive belief system and how you view yourself in the world. And this was actually my favorite thing to learn about in this class because it really showed how you have to present information to students, like when I'm going to become a teacher. The next section is your emotional memory. Is this one has hearts on this bead, if you can see. And so I made it the emotional memory, where your brain, when you learn something that you like, you're most likely to remember it, and so that's your emotional memory. Then it goes to learning and retention. Learning goes with like your neurons, and it's how your information is taken into your brain, but then your attention is how you understand it and like what you will recall later in life, and that goes to this gold bead, which is, or it's like a orangey, and I remember this one as retrieval because it's like a golden retriever. I don't know. I just remember it like that. And your retrieval would be nothing without, like, all the information that's stored in your long-term memory would be nothing without this retrieval bead, or without your retrieval. And so I remember this because this is when you go in your brains and in your brain, and it finds the information that you recalled. So this next section is your transfer, and so this first one is transfer of learning, which is or is transfer during learning, because I made it blue because a D can switch to a B, blue, whatever. And transfer during learning is when your information goes to your prior knowledge and you're understanding it based on what you've learned in life and how you take in that information and how you produce it later, comparing with things that you already have in your brain. Whereas transfer of learning is when you're learning a new concept, and it's how your brain figures out how you will put this into your brain and make experiences off of that. Then this next speed is positive transfer, and then this is when you're learning a concept and the things that you have learned in your stored memory help you to relate to this and you prosper through this transfer. Whereas negative transfer is when you get it confused. Like I remember this one by latitude and longitude. I learned both of those in the same time and I had a lot of trouble with it. So negative transfer is when you have something in your stored memory that messes up what you're trying to learn and you don't get the information. The latitude and longitude is just my way to remember that. And that is really successful with your students. You have to have positive transfer instead of negative. So if they have prior knowledge that messes them up, it's really not beneficial at all. So my next section is split into the left and the right hemisphere. My first one is green, which is the left hemisphere. This represents the logical side of the brain and like sequential systems and kind of languages are in this. And it really just, you have to have logic in your brain, and that is the left side. And I made it green because it's left and leaves are green, LL. And then the next one is pink. I think pink is a color that prevents, or like that produces creativity. I don't know, just my head. And then, so the right side of the brain is your creativity. And this is where you can do math problems, and it's your artistic side. It's very creative. And that is your right side of the brain. Next is the brain and the arts. So it goes music, visual arts, movement. So first, music produces, it's your like emotion to it. Like you have an immediate reaction to music because it's your sound and you can relate to music. Music pretends like your mood, and so it's very important to your brain and how you're learning. And then visual arts created our cultures, and so the visual arts is really effective because cultures are everywhere in the world, and seeing them in your imagination and learning it all helps in your brain, and it all started in there. Then it goes back to the M because this one is movement, where when you're learning and you're exercising, you're getting oxygen to your brain, and oxygen is the only way your brain can function and your body, so movement is very important. The next is the final section, and it goes foundations, practicing, and respect. Foundation is your brain has to have part of something for it to work. So for instance, when you're learning a new subject and you have a prior knowledge of something, you can relate it to, and that will help you. Then practicing is putting that sequence, that exercise that you learned, and putting it to practice so it can be beneficial to yourself, because if you don't practice it, you're going to lose it. Then next is your respect, because you have to have respect for what you're learning and respect to follow forward and prosper in your learning environment. This is my Quipu, and I learned a lot this semester, and bye.